kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this mo, like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's go, cause this is our jam. This is our jam. Let me break it down right quick for my haters, my dictators and bad raiders. Since you never seem to get it right no more, then right no more. Kick back your feet and watch your back from perpetrators. My game's strong and my range roll. I got the blackjack juice and my racks off the roof. And you see the SUV rolling up next to me, old enough to take you over Sesame. Remember, back when I was a kid, all I did was stroll back from the cold over South Bridge. My mama told me do no entiendo. All I ever heard was noise over my Nintendo. But when you get the chance to go up in this life, make sure that you take it, never ever think twice, yeah. And if you wanna get higher, pick up the mic and get to rapping, cause you're never getting higher. Yeah, in the front row, kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this mo, like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's go, cause this is our jam. This is our jam. Oh, yeah. In the front row, kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this mo, like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's zone, cause this is our jam. This is our jam. When I reminisce over you, my lordy, rest to make way for my newfound shorty. Checking the mic for ligaments while I'm wrecking. Same time came out the womb while recording. All I ever did was make jokes out of suckers. Told them about the life that I live, mad ruckus. But if you never seen a grown man rock jewelry like me, jealousy be coming over you, then you bite me. All these other people, they be coolin' just like me. Talking about the homies and unusually right beat. Yeah, my crew is off the roof, and I told her not to brag about the crew, even though it's new. Yeah, even though it's new. Yeah, in the front row, kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this mo, like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's go, cause this is our jam. This is our jam.
Welcome in, everybody. It's another edition of Esports Weekly. I'm Ryan Agro Bailey. I will be your host as per usual, but it's not going to be a usual show here for you today. This is the big pre-MSI Esports Palooza. I don't know. I didn't really work on that title, but this is a big show. I mean, MSI starts next week on Monday morning, so we have to get everything in right now. And in order to do that, we're going to go through each team that made it to MSI, talk about their chances, their matchups potentially that they could see. It's going to be a big show, so I hope you stay tuned with us the entire time. And we're going to start with what I think might be the most interesting part of a big cross-play, cross-region LAN like this. And that's, what is the meta going to become? Because the SPL meta has really gone in a wonky direction. It's been really hard on objectives, frenzies all the time, not a whole lot of teamfight relics usually, unless you count frenzy as one of those. So where is that, all these teams going to go? Are they going to continue to lean into that, draft compositions that are great at securing objectives? Maybe we might see some more ISISes and continued prioritization of the Merlin. Or will these SML and console teams kind of throw a wrench in some of this? I mean, if I'm the minor league, do I want to try and just emulate what these SPL teams have been practicing for weeks or months now and try and do it better than them after only playing it for the last few weeks? That doesn't seem like right to me. I think if I'm a minor league team, I'm coming in and trying to throw a whole new sort of wrench and just look at the SPL teams. I just think that when you're a team that hasn't had that same level of practice up until this point, trying to beat a team that's been destroying other SPL level squads at the same game for the last few weeks is kind of a pointless measure. So if I'm an SML or a console team, am I building frenzy every game? Maybe. But I'm going with some different picks. I'm going with a different way to start. I'm playing the map a little bit differently, and I'm interested to see if that's what's going to happen. Or if maybe the minor league teams, maybe a team like Flashpoint comes in, they're going to be full and healthy, by the way, and we just see Johnny pick some Alquang and do what they normally do and end up dominating with their own game with a little bit of SPL spice. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see what's going on. In fact, let's take a look at that play-in bracket. I mentioned Flashpoint. They've got an interesting matchup up against Hype Unit at the top end on Monday. Out Cold Armada, Rival Sanguine, and Nemesis Simplicity will be our quarterfinals. Then the teams that move on will get on to the semis and ultimately the finals. Now, if you make the final here in the play-in bracket, congratulations, you've got a great reward. If you win, you get to play Team Dignitas. If you lose, you get to play Team Rival. God bless, man. That one's going to be tough either way, but this is your finals bracket. E-United Splice is a guaranteed matchup. Knights and Renegades as well on the bottom half of that quarterfinals. Look, it's going to be crazy in these matches. I mean, you look at just the quarterfinals alone. Knights Renegades is an unbelievable matchup. E-United Splice, I think, has a lot of great implications. Splice just got done smacking around E-United, and then E-United responded by beating Team Dignitas at the end of the season. So maybe that could have rejuvenated this E-United squad and give them a better shot up against Splice. It's going to be a ton of fun. Again, Monday morning is when you want to tune in for all this, but we've got a full show for you here. You've seen all the teams. There's a billion teams, it feels like, coming to MSI. Let's take a closer look at a lot of those squads. It's finally almost here. 13 weeks of some of the best Smite we've seen. Sweeps, reverse sweeps, crazy comebacks, and convincing stomps. We've had it all in the first phase of Season 6. But now, we're down to the best of the best. Here are your teams coming to the Midseason Invitational. Team Rival.
Rival's first set didn't go their way. They lost. They haven't lost since that moment, and everything has been going in their direction since. Behind the leadership of Polar Bear Mike, Final K and the boys have ascended to #1 in the league, and they show no signs of slowing down now.
Dignitas.
Dignitas burst into the league, finding wins over tough opposition. 5 of their 9 games, however, did end up going to a Game 5. Whether that's helpful or not, we'll find out come game.
The Pittsburgh Knights.
Pittsburgh was the team to watch before the season began. Some of the biggest names in Smite all on one roster. Near impossible expectations for a near impossible team. And those expectations have been met. Pittsburgh Knights, home of the king.
Renegades.
Late to the party, Renegades dethroned Dignitas, giving them their very first loss. A hot performance between Dardus and Funballer wasn't enough to save them from their next 3 losses. With their impressive victory over Dignitas and beating the bottom 4 teams, it was good enough to qualify to MSI, but is it enough to win it? Especially with their first opponent being Pittsburgh Knights?
E United.
Not meeting the expectations through the scoreline, but to Emilito's credit, E United's second half was more difficult than the first. And now he'll get a chance at redemption against Splice in the first round of the MSI.
Splice.
Splice started the year the same way they started the last, with a bunch of losses. Since then, the team has completely transformed from the one that we saw win the most recent World Championships. Don't sleep on them, however. Splice are a team to watch out for at the event.
Simplicity.
Heading into MSI as EU's #1 SML team, Simplicity are looking to shake up the standings and prove they've got what it takes to take down the SPL. With a roster that's all been here before, they know the journey won't be easy, but that it's possible, and they intend on showing it.
Flashpoint.
Flashpoint came into Season 6 hot and underrated, but through continued set wins were able to prove they couldn't be counted out. MSI isn't the first time this team has qualified for a LAN, but it will be their first time getting to play with their jungler Johnny.
Killing spree.
Flashpoint's ambitions are enormous, but MSI will be their chance to finally prove what they're capable of.
Sanguine.
Coming from LATAM, Sanguine know that people aren't really expecting much, but this year they're looking to overtake the bracket and show everyone that Europe and North America aren't the only 2 forms of competition.
Armada.
Armada started off Season 6 looking undefeatable, but after losing Basket and Scream, the team finally began to bleed. They're entering MSI as North America's #1 SML seed, but staying #1 might be a little difficult after all the roster shakeups.
Team Rival.
A familiar name, but a different look. Rival returns to land to take names. Vaporish Coast and Fly say goodbye, and Dobson plus Davies step in. A perennial contender, Rival look to leave a mark, even without the Pentakid.
Hype Unit.
Despite some early stumbles, Hype Unit comes into MSI hot. Made up of defending console world champs, Hype Unit has aspirations beyond best console team. The squad of Smite vets is here to make noise.
Out Cold Gaming.
The PS4 EU scene may be young, but the talent is already there. Out Cold were head and shoulders above the rest of their competition, and whatever they lack in experience, they make up for being earnest. Let's see if they can take some names at MSI.
Nemesis.
Is being undefeated good? You'll have to ask Nemesis as they ran their way through the competition and confidently earned a spot at MSI. With a world champ and a runner-up in their pocket, Nemesis have a great shot at taking down some teams.
Judging by the first phase of the SPL, this midseason invitational might be our best event ever. So make sure you're tuned in. July 8th through the 11th, mixer.com/SmiteGame. We'll see you there.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's start at the top with our games on Monday. We've got an intriguing one right away, Flashpoint versus Hype Unit. And to talk about it, we've got Taco here, who's joining us here on Esports Weekly. Taco, this is going to be not only a great set because it's going to kick off MSI, but I feel like this is the one among all the console teams. I mean, Hype Unit's the defending world champions. This is the one where if there's going to be a console team to win, I feel like this is it.
This is definitely upset territory for sure, and it's something that Flashpoint, I'm sure, are definitely trying to prepare for in advance because Flashpoint aren't coming into this all clean and easy cut as it might seem. In fact, the team has actually been having some struggles as of late trying to sort out their whole visa situation, so there are some concerns that they might not have the full roster to field here at MSI.
Now, good news on that front. That was a concern for them up until like 1 a.m. last last night, where they did confirm that everyone on the original roster will be coming, barring under any unforeseen circumstances, that is. But it looks like Flashpoint's going to be at full strength. Does that change the way that Hype Unit needs to prepare?
I think it definitely does, without a doubt. A week in Flashpoint, I think it's a little bit more feasible to expect some slip-ups to take place naturally in the team, because anytime you introduce substitutes to a roster, you can expect the synergy to be altered to a certain extent. But with Flashpoint being able to field their full roster, this could be a potentially big statement set for Johnny even coming into this LAN.
I mean, this is huge, man. I think that first of all, Flashpoint being at full strength at a LAN, I believe that's the first time we're going to get a chance to see that. Johnny, as you mentioned, the real star of this team, getting his first opportunity to play at a real LAN environment. I mean, do you think that he'll still be able to bring that same level of hard carry potential that he brings online?
This will be the first challenge he's ever had for it, because you have to remember that this is Johnny's first real opportunity at a LAN event. The pressure isn't like when you're sitting at home playing on your PC. LAN environment is a totally different beast to undertake, and with that in mind, that's where I would expect some of this veteranship from Hype Unit to begin to factor in, because these are all members that are familiar with the LAN setting. They've all been under the scope on more than one occasion, and I think that they could definitely bring it to Flashpoint.
Yeah, that's a great point. There is a lot of LAN experience on the other side for Hype Unit, but do you think their playstyle is an advantage here against Flashpoint? Because Hype Unit usually is a lot more early game focused. I'd say Flashpoint's a lot more late game teamfight focused. Do you think that's something that can be an advantage for Hype Unit, or do you think that plays more towards Flashpoint?
Hype Unit should definitely look to play to their strengths. I think that that's going to be their best opportunity, and if it means trying to dominate that early to mid game aspect, then go for it. Because I feel like if you try to tangle with Flashpoint in the late game, this is a team that is very seasoned. There's been a lot of stiff competition in the European minor league all throughout Season 6 so far, and trying to take Flashpoint to late could just be the end of Hype Unit.
Now, for all the console teams, it's worth noting, I think, that they have the option of playing either with their controller or with a keyboard and mouse. From what we've heard, Hype Unit is going to be playing fully on keyboard and mouse. Do you think that that puts them at a disadvantage? Do you think that evens the playing ground? I mean, look, it's no secret playing on a controller is just ostensibly harder than it is on keyboard and mouse, but that's something that they're really comfortable with. I mean, that's what they play on week in and week out. Would you have preferred to see them on the controller, or do you think keyboard and mouse is the way to go?
I think keyboard and mouse is the way to go for these guys, considering that they're playing against one of the minor league teams with the keyboard and mouse settings naturally. Then it only makes sense for the Hype Unit to try and give themselves the best opportunity possible, and I do feel like that is going with the keyboard and mouse. Plus, all of those players, they're traditionally playing PC ranked anyways on their off time, a lot of them at least, and I'm definitely expecting to see some big things from Hype Unit.
I think this one's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and it looks like F-Dot's actually siding with the boys of Hype Unit on the prediction side. Taco, do you feel the same way? You think the console boys can get the upset?
It's been a tough call for myself. Personally, I'm still not sold either direction.
The real toss-up potentially between these two squads. Who do you think will be the difference maker in a win or a loss on either side?
That's a spicy one. Maybe Layers, actually.
Okay.
I think it's going to come down to the jungle. Layers versus Johnny, because remember, Johnny's first time, Layers has been through all of this process before, so it'll be interesting to see how these two junglers scale up.
Also can't wait to see Wolves versus Civi, man. That's going to be a lot of fun. Wolves has been the subject of a lot of hype on the console scene for quite some time. Taco, thanks for joining us to talk about some Hype Unit. But that's not the only console versus minor league matchup we have. We've got 3 more to talk about, including Armada going up against EU PS4. We'll be right back to talk about that matchup.
Long have I been content to simply bear witness. I am done watching. You do not know me, but you will. I am Orlan, and I am your king.
Now, Monday doesn't get a whole lot easier for the console side. In fact, it might just get harder for the boys of Out Cold Gaming. They've got Armada to take down. To talk about their chances, we've got Anatoly joining us here on the show. Toli, we just got done talking about Hype Unit up against Flashpoint. Now, that has potential to be a very, very close set. I think that a lot of people are very much looking forward to that. This set between Out Cold and Armada, I think, has the biggest chance of being a complete blowout. Armada has looked so good. Out Cold is in possibly the weakest region overall in console right now. Do you feel the same way?
I agree. I think that despite both of these teams ending with an equal 11-1 record in set-wise, it's not going to be even close once they actually play this best of three. Armada, despite not having the same exact roster from the start, where Baskin and Scream now in the SPL out of Splice, I think still the replacements out of Solar Troll and Masked is good enough to be able to find the victory in this best of three. A huge lack of LAN experience out of Out Cold Gaming, and that's where it really matters.
Sure. I mean, then you look across the way at guys like Mask and Snoopy, who have been going to LANs for a long time and competing at a very high level. Gino played in some LANs last year as well. Even Solar Troll has his experience. Yeah. Meerkat won a Collegiate World Championship. Got to put respect on that. So basically everyone on Armada has LAN experience. Out Cold, not exactly the same thing. In a matchup like this, if you're Out Cold Gaming, what do you go in with? I mean, you know you're such heavy underdogs in a spot like this. Do you try and do some cheese invades? Do you try and do some weird picks? I mean, does it get that desperate that quickly?
It's got to be something early game, because you're not beating Armada in the late game, in the team fight scenario around these objective fights. It has to be some sort of speed buff invade, maybe some mid pressure, trying to bully out Meerkat, maybe invade some red buffs. It has to be the early game looking for some synergy and some momentum out of Synortus in mid and Kinder Warrior out of the jungle.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to try and just get something rolling there. And Synortus and Kinder Warrior, I think, have looked like probably the two strongest members. But you've got to go up against Mask and Meerkat. Do you think that's an area where Out Cold can make some plays? I mean, Meerkat has kind of been left on the line a couple times. I mean, Armada likes to dive pretty heavily. They leave Meerkat alone. Maybe they can make something work there?
Meerkat is definitely flexible in his God Pool selection, going from Morrigan into like more of the Zeus and the Poseidons from time to time. That could be somewhere that they lean on. Another thing is the jungle matchup, where Mask can get into his own head at times, but in this particular matchup, I don't expect him to really feel the same kind of pressure that he has shown some disarray when he was playing the SPL under the LG trifecta and CLG banner.
Now on the other side for Armada, it feels like this is a good sort of dip your toe in the water game, get prepared for the rest of the LAN. In particular, I think I'm looking to the duo lane of Gino and Snoopy. I mean, the duo lane for Out Cold has looked a little bit weak at times. Snoopy, by my estimation, has looked like the best player in the minor league as of late. So this is an area where I think Armada can really break the game open.
The Just Lion Hunter out of Out Cold Gaming has his hands full with Snoopy, because Snoopy is not only going to play Hunters to try to win the 1v1 boxing, but also can bring out the mages from time to time. The Vulcan is one of his go-tos from his COG Red days.
That's right.
Transitioning into TSM, it's something that he's brought up in the past. Wouldn't be surprised to see it in this set.
Gino also has a really explosive God Pool that can go with a lot of different things. He also has those games where he might get a little bit over-aggressive, but sometimes that's what you want out of your support. I really think that the duo lane in particular, Mr. Sax and Just Lion, need to be getting the work in right now, because I think they're going to have their hands full for sure.
Maybe invade some blue buffs, who knows? That could be something that Mr. Sack leans on, tries to get Solar Troll uncomfortable, because Solar Troll heavily relies a lot on the early laning phase, getting some early advantages to win that 1v1 matchup, control the Totem of Coups. That could be one way that Out Cold Gaming tries to mitigate the strengths out of Armada. Lean on that solo lane a little bit.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Solar Troll pull out the patented Uller in this matchup. I mean, get himself, in a comfortable position and just get to play one of those gods he likes to play that he might not get to play later on against some of the tougher opponents. It's a good warm-up mechanical god, right? I mean, if you get rolling on the Uller, you got to be feeling pretty good.
He also likes the Thor and the Tears from time to time, so I wouldn't be surprised to see something spicy. But it's not to say that Armada is going to take this team lightly, because in a LAN environment, you can't take any team lightly. Last year's Insignum going pretty far in that last LAN.
That's a great point. Let's take a look at some of those predictions and see where all the casters are sitting. I imagine What's Up Is Hindu trolling?
It's the EU pride. The European PlayStation, there's got to be something
What's
about
up?
Hindu for them.
Okay, when is Hindu on the show? Okay, not for a little bit. Okay, he's actually the very last correspondent we have on here on Esports Weekly. So you better stay tuned, because I promise you the first thing I'm going to ask Hindu when he joins is why he predicted this way, because I'm very curious.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Everyone else basically has Armada by a landslide, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
I'm sure if we asked the fans at home, it would probably be like 80-20.
Easily. Yeah, Armada looking pretty good in this one, I believe. Totally, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you very soon. Like I said, we're not going to get to talk to Hindu yet, though I'm very curious. We've got some more minor league versus console team matchups coming up on the other side of this break. Hey, what's up, everybody? Aggro here. The SPL's in full swing, and it's so awesome to have everyone here and competing live on LAN. But you know what else is awesome? That we have fantasy esports for the Smite Pro League. The Fantasy Picks platform Prize Picks wants you to put your SPL knowledge to the test. If you're over the age of 18 and reside in an eligible US location, you can visit SmitePicks.com to make your SPL viewing experience a little more thrilling. If you're eligible, here's how you can submit your picks. Visit the Smite Picks website to see which matches are being played that week and what players are available for your picks. Each player is given a projected fantasy score that's based on their estimated KDA for each match. Choose 2 to 4 players from different teams and decide whether you think those players will go over or under their projected fantasy score. Choose your entry amount, then confirm your entry to lock in your picks. In order to win, you must choose correctly for each player you pick. Sit back and watch the SPL games. You can use the Prize Picks live tracker to keep an eye on the players you picked as they battle it out in their games and see how your predictions turn out. Get them all right, and you win. If you want to try out this fantasy platform for yourself, make sure you head on over to SmitePicks.com. Make sure you read all the terms and conditions and put your SPL expertise to the test. Welcome back, everybody. Team Rival is the first seed on the PC side, but they also have a console team that's coming and has some pretty high hopes. We've got Taco joining us again here on Esports Weekly to talk about their matchup up against Sanguine. And we'll start with Team Rival. Rival is a team that has a lot of LAN experience, at least in the side of Rapio and Predators and guys like that, and Dinosaur, of course, in support. Do you think that that will give them enough of an edge up against Sanguine?
No. It's been a kind of a tough call, I think, trying to make the decision between Sanguine and Rival ultimately, but what really influenced the decision is just Rival's previous LAN performances. I think the only time this team has really felt that symbol of success was in DreamHack Valencia, and then it was rather short-lived because once Worlds came back around, well, we saw the downfall of Rival yet again. And this team has undergone a decent amount of roster shakeups as well. You have to keep in mind that with the departure of Vaporish Coast from this roster and 50-meter Fly, that those were 2 pretty heavy blows, but Dobson has definitely been a huge fill-in for this team. And Dinosaur, I'm actually really glad that he's going to be one of the first people we see popping up on the replays, because I think that Dinosaur has been massive for Rival in Season 6.
Yeah, I mean, aggressive support is something that a lot of teams are playing with, and I think that can really fit in pretty well to Dinosaur's playstyle. That's exactly what he usually likes to do. The Erlong Shen, the Odin, part of those 2 highlights right there. But man, I mean, you see the highs for this team. Like you said, DreamHack Valencia, they do very well. They win that. But then, you know, Wolves delivers the spanking of a lifetime to Predators a couple lands ago. That's something that I still can't get out of my mind.
I don't think he can either.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame him. Davey hasn't looked up to snuff all the time. He has had some very good sets, some sets that leave a little bit to be desired. And this Sanguine roster they're going up against are no slouches. They've looked like a legitimate contender in NA.
And that's probably the biggest issue here for Rival, is that while this is a team that can consistently perform well enough to make it to the LAN event, I'm not sure that they're going to have quite enough gas to finish off the event strong. And Sanguine is also, I think, just massively bloodthirsty. This is a team coming out of LATAM where they've pretty much accepted the fact that SPL, while they do respect the players individually, and the same thing for the minor league teams, you know, everybody respects Sanguine individually as players, but they don't necessarily expect this team to amount to much more than an odd set win or 2 here and there, and that is something that I think Sanguine is drastically trying to change.
I think Sanguine's the perfect example of a team that's greater than the sum of its parts. I mean, they work really, really well together. They're individually skilled, but their teamwork is really, really impressive to me, and I think that your highlight of their hunger coming into this, I think, is really a good point, because this is a team that I think has been undervalued by a lot of the fans so far, and I think that the players usually get that feeling and they kind of come in with a chip on their shoulder. And Sanguine's a team that practices hard, has a good understanding of the meta, and their individual skill is enough that I think, we're not just talking about their set against Rival here, but I think they can make it into the finals bracket on Tuesday.
This is probably the worst possible matchup in my mind that Rival's console team could have matched up to, because Sanguine, again, I mean, Shinto and Finitum have just looked phenomenal all throughout this year. Even when Armada was in their prime with their or original roster, we still saw Sanguine feasibly taking that team through those matches and seeming as though they had opportunities to actually win outright. And that original Armada roster, that was a team that a lot of us saw as a possible SPL roster.
Yeah, certainly that level. I do think the Sanguine boys have that level of potential. You highlighted Shinto and Yarkor, or excuse me, you highlighted the mid and jungle. I'm talking about Yarkor. That's where my mind was going, because like I said, Predators had got handled by Wolves on land not too long ago. I do think that's a huge storyline for him still personally. And then you go up against a guy of Yarkor's caliber. This is going to be a really interesting matchup for him. I think the Predators may have a tough time.
Well, it's not just Predators who has to keep an eye out. I mean, every single member of this Sanguine roster, whether it's coming from the Hunter role or mid, jungle, and solo, I think that there is something to be feared, and it's not going to be an easy feat.
No, certainly not. Let's see if what the casters think is how the set is going to go. Sanguine across the board in this one. Don't imagine you're going anywhere different, Taco. You've been talking pretty highly of them.
I cannot go differently. I am also on the Sanguine hype train, and I'm honestly looking forward to seeing what they can do at MSI.
Yeah, me too. I really do think this is a team that can make some noise on Tuesday and potentially make it into that finals bracket come Wednesday. It's certainly a team to keep your eye on. Rangyu as well, up against Dinosaur, 2 aggressive supports. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Taco, thank you for joining us. We've got one more minor league console match to talk about, and we'll get to it right on the other side.
Vamana was one of the first gods in Smite. So when we started work on a new football skin concept, we had to find a god of the football field to bring him to life. Kelvin Benjamin is an NFL player, formerly of the Carolina Panthers and the Bills, and also a longtime Smite fan. We met Kelvin at DreamHack at HRX in November of last year, and we really built a strong relationship with him there at the event.
It's been great, man. Seeing a lot of new content coming to Smite, seeing the gist of how things work behind the scenes. I got into Smite just browse the Xbox store one day and ran across Smite and downloaded it. And when you're done studying the plays and going over the playbook and stuff, you just, hop on and that's your downtime.
We actually had a Vamana skin on the schedule that we were leaning to go towards the more sports route, and we couldn't think of a better way to kind of get Kelvin involved into the creation of the skin.
Kelvin came in, I sat with him, and we just went over the lines, and he added basically his own magic and made it as authentic as possible.
It's crazy because, I work on this game and I'm really interactive with the community, but you just never know who's playing the game that you work on all the time.
All praises go to these guys around here, man, Hi-Res, and what they do.
We're so excited about this skin, and we're really excited to show it to you guys.
Touchdown Vamana will be available June 18th in the Independence Chest for a limited time.
Welcome back, everybody. We've been talking so much about these cross-play opportunities, how well these console teams can stack up against the minor league. And maybe one of the most interesting ones will be our final game on Monday. We've got Anatoly back with us here on the desk to break down Nemesis versus Simplicity. And Toly, I think this one is going to be so much fun to watch because Nemesis has a long history of a lot of successful players on this squad, but Simplicity has been really hot as of late.
That's right. Jumpa being part of that Season 4 World Championship team, coming in second in Season 5. Good history there. Good leadership coming out of that jungle role. Undefeated this season online, but how is that going to translate up against Simplicity that ended with a very great hot streak, winning 6 of their last games?
Yeah, I mean, Simplicity was really in second place, was kind of hovering around second, third for a lot of the split, and then jumped up to first near the end, and certainly deservingly so. But as you mentioned, Nemesis, undefeated. I don't know that they've looked as good as teams like Hype Unit have, though. Even despite Hype Unit having some losses, I almost feel like the lack of adversity may have hurt this team a little bit, Toly.
Well, we'll see how it kind of transitions into the land because this is their best challenge that they're ever going to get. If they could actually beat out Simplicity, I think that they could potentially beat out Armada in the rest of it because this is a good stepping stone. But how are they going to translate into the actual bracket? That's going to be very difficult against the actual SPL teams. But this is a great team, sure. They haven't truly been challenged in the North American PlayStation League, but these are still some really great talented players players across the board. You got Nickwood in the solo position, obviously jumping that jungle role. Covey out of mid. He loves his style from time to time. And Matt Koiz and Zaxi, that duo lane is very strong. You have to respect them if you're Simplicity.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you've paid any attention at all to the console scene over the last few years, you should know every single member of this Nemesis squad. The question is, I'm just kind of curious if they've been practicing against teams like Hype Unit. You know, a lot of these, all these players used to be on Xbox. I know they can still play on that. I wonder if they've been scrimming there to try and get some extra practice, because I am concerned about their level of just competition they've been playing in the PS4 NA. As for the other side, Simplicity, as you mentioned, they've gotten so hot as of late. They've looked so good. What was kind of the key for them in their turnaround coming in?
I think their synergy just finally kicked in, because their only real challenge at the start was Flashpoint that went off to that 6-1 run. But then finally, once Simplicity figured it out between Fails in the jungle, I think Death Panther as well, playing the more hunters in the mid lane, things started to click a little bit more for this unit. Maniac started to transition effectively on the Jormungandr. It was a little bit rough around the edges to start, but he felt very comfortable after seeing how it should be played, and that's where the strength really lied. I think also Genetics on that support position. He's kind of that inconsistent factor where he's either going to pop off on the assassin support and carry the team, or cause his team a couple of losses.
And may accidentally, well, should be accidentally lock in Nuwa's support. You never really know with this squad. Streak Up has been a real standout member for me, though, in the ADC role. He's been playing a lot of magical ADCs. He may have been the one to start this kind of Chronos meta that a lot of teams are kind of adopting, but you've seen him on the Merlin as well. Streak Up seems to be an X factor for me.
Yeah, that's a very good thing to note, is the fact that they can flex, because Death Panther loves his physical hunters in the mid lane. So if you do first pick that Merlin, you put it on Streak Up in a meta where the hunters are being left alone anyway, you can get away with that. So that's something that could be a factor in terms of doing their homework. Nemesis could keep that in mind and look for ways to have Jumpa lean on Streak Up.
Yeah, Jumpa being over there, and Zaxi as well, I think, being left alone in that 1v1 is going to be key. Can he push those advantages whenever he gets them? The magical ADCs and magical characters in that role don't seem to leave a whole lot of openings.
Yeah, and I think that this is similar God Pool, actually. Not the fact that Zaxy's going to be playing the mages like the Merlin necessarily, but the Cronoses are going to be highly contested. I think Zaxy is an aggressive hunter when he wants to be. Depending on what Zaxy we see that day, could be the make it or break it factor for this squad.
Yeah, I used to be on a team with Zaxy, and he used to tell us all the time he had the best Chronos in the world. Well, it's time to prove it, right? Because Streak Up's got legitimately one of the best Chronoses in the world. So I'm excited to see how that one shakes out. Seems like the casters are leaning towards Simplicity pretty heavily here across the board. Do you feel the same way, Tully?
Yeah, I do feel the same way. I mean, Simplicity just has so much SPL experience between their solo jungle and mid. Even though Genetics and Streak Up have only been in the minor league thus far, when Genetics showed up in the Insignum roster there in his squad, it was a good sight for the future. And I think that transition from Season 5 to Season 6 between Death Panther and Genetics hasn't slowed down. And this is a really big challenge. I don't know how Nemesis is going to come out on top.
Do you feel like Simplicity has what it takes to be a real contender come Wednesday in the finals bracket? There's been a lot of talk about this team.
It's possible. I have to see more of them at a LAN, because online versus LAN is a totally different ball game. I don't think it's really fair to make that prediction now to see like if Simplicity do go the distance and qualify it, because it's what Rival and then Dignitas. Those are some two big opponents, some titans. I don't really see it in the future.
Yeah, whoever comes out of this lower end bracket is going to have a tough time, no doubt about that. Totally, thank you very much for wrapping us up on the play-in bracket. And that takes us to the finals bracket. Right on the other side of this break, we'll start to break down these SPL teams.
Hey everyone, Heroic Leap J Nash, Evil Mojo Alyssa, and Titan Isaiah here with some exciting news.
Crossplay and cross progression for Smite,
Paladin,
and Realm Royale is live.
Players on PC, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch can now play with and against each other.
And by linking your Xbox and Nintendo Switch accounts to a high-res account, you'll be able to enjoy all of your own content and account progress across 3 platforms.
Head over to my.highresstudios.com to link your accounts, and be sure to check out our crossplay and cross-progression FAQ at highresstudios.com/crossplay for more details. We'll continue to forge ahead
on the battleground
and in the realm.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time to start talking about the finals bracket. And we figured the best way to do this is to go through the games that we know are going to happen first, and then we'll break down the top seeds and what they might face coming in towards the back end of the show. But let's start with E United and Splice. And to start breaking that down, we've got John Finch with us here on Esports Weekly. Finch, this is a matchup that just happened. I mean, we just saw these two teams play week 13. Well, I guess it was week 12, but it was basically week 13 because it was in the first half. It was Monday or Tuesday of the last week.
Yeah, if you count the bye week, it's week 13.
Right. In Splice, I mean, they crushed them, right?
Yes,
they crushed them. How does E United kind of mentally reset from such a recent beating?
Well, I think it helps if in between that, you beat Dignitas, right? And I think that
point.
probably is the reset point that if you're E United, you have to focus in on, is that this clearly is a strong team, and that maybe they just weren't firing on all cylinders, and they had that set up against Splice. And I think there's something to that. 3-0 is not the difference. I don't think that the gap between those two teams is that vast.
Sure.
Where E United shouldn't be winning a game at all within it. So I think if you're E United, you can kind of chalk it up to maybe just a bad matchup, and that they can come back in and look stronger when they play up against Splice here at the MSI.
Don't forget either that the third game of that set was what might be the worst SPL throw we've seen in years,
Sure.
where E United's up by a catastrophic amount and they somehow end up losing. Do you think that losing in that style helps them at all? Like, obviously, if we play that game another 99 times, we're going to win 99 times in a row. Do you think that helps them a little bit?
Yeah, some of it is the basket magic, and I think that that's a real force in the universe with which you can't contest. So
like
maybe
gravity,
right?
Yeah,
it's just
you know,
like that.
like just a law of physics at this point.
Yeah, so if it's any other kind of throw, maybe you can shrug it off, but it is, I think, the basket effect. I think that is kind of a real thing, and I think that kind of moves into what's the biggest matchup here, right? It's Benji and Baskin, and we were just talking about this, weren't we? Who are the best just solo laners in general, and what's that conversation? And you obviously have to have Baskin's name in there, but just in terms of winning, of getting it done, it's hard to not say Benji, isn't it? So
it is.
So we kind of get to see them on this biggest stage, throw it down, and we get to see between these two who really does come out on top. And I think that's the one you really got to look at.
Former teammates as well. I think that's always a fun dynamic because you know, especially with a guy of Baskin's ego, if there is one. If there is,
maybe, yeah.
How many times do you think during scrims a couple seasons ago that Baskin was like, Benji, I would have zoned better there.
Yeah, here's
you know
what
I mean.
Yeah,
here's what you should do. And Benji's like, shut up, man. I've been playing solo longer than you have.
That's the salt machine, right?
Yeah, that's the salt machine, exactly. So you know there's got to be some dynamic there that both players are going to want to show the other one how to really solo.
And it's a bit multi-layered, isn't it? Because the supports are going to be over there at the beginning of the game unless things just dramatically shift from what we saw in the first phase. And so Aurora and Collis are going to have a hand a bit in that matchup, at least in the early game. And how's that going to go? Aurora, you were telling me this earlier, loves to be on that side of the map, loves to invade over there and take away the blue buff. That could be something that impacts Benji. Will they pull Collis over there to try and mitigate it a lot more? Or is Benji going to just man mode it? You know, kind of just deal with maybe not having the buff, try and fight Baskin heads up in that matchup, even if he is losing out a little bit more. There's a lot to be said about how that could go. I think it'll probably favor Baskin a little bit, especially if Aurora's there, but Benji's the kind of guy that's done it into even worse odds before.
And the other side of the map, I think, is just as interesting in that Cyclone Spin, by my estimation, is the best player in the league right now.
Wow,
I think he has made the biggest impact for this team, but Emilito on the other side for United has really struggled.
Yeah.
How well can ML handle that 1v1?
That's a great point. I think there's a really good chance Cyclone Spin could potentially bully Emilito out over there in that matchup. We leave him in the 1v1s a lot nowadays, and Cyclone Spin's exactly the kind of guy that'll do it. And he can do it two ways. He's not just going to like stand at your tower line and pressure you out. Cyclone Spin will rotate. Cyclone Spin will go take stuff from the jungle. He'll pull Gold Furies. He'll even impact some mid fights if you give him a little bit of extra time where he's able to push up and clear a wave. That could be huge, is how much pressure Cyclone Spin gets there, or it could potentially be none if Emil shows up.
And God forbid if Cyclone Spin Freya, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
stop doing that.
You can't do it. You're not allowed. It's against the league rules.
It is truly against the rules.
Cooper will backhand you if you do that. Like at this point, it has been that dominant.
I do also want to talk about this mid matchup though. Tings and Venenu, very interesting. They can sometimes play some similar god picks as well. Nuwa is one that they both value, so that could be something that could be looked at. I think this mid lane matchup could be another one that could be a bit of a decider.
I would say that both these mid laners are some of our most volatile mid laners, right?
Yes,
where when they look really good, when they look real good, they look real good. When they look bad, they look real bad.
Yeah.
And so I think that they need to find a middle ground potentially, and we'll see what happens there. But I'm a little, you know what? I say I'm surprised, but then I think about how dominant Splice was in 2 out of those 3 games against the United, and then they end up winning the third by a miracle. How do you feel that this matchup's going to go?
I think I get it, man. When these 5 players are all there, Splice hasn't lost, right? Like when all of them are playing. So it's a smaller sample size, I'll admit it, but I think I do lean towards Splice in this one. I don't think I give it to them free. I doubt it'll be a 2-0, I guess, in this context, but I do expect Splice to come out on top.
Man, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. That's all I know. MSI is chock full of matchups just like these. Finch, thanks for joining us talking about one of these premier matchups. We got the other one on the other side. Pittsburgh Knights versus Renegades is no easy quarterfinal for either squad. We'll be right back to talk about that match. Gods and goddesses, welcome to Battle for Olympus, an all-new event featuring new gods, a never-before-seen pantheon, and all new skins, including an unlockable Tier 5 skin for Kukulkan. Battle for Olympus kicks off with the release of Horus and Set, the first ever dual god release in Smite. Will you side with Horus, rightful heir to Osiris' throne, or Set, the god that aims to claim the throne at any cost? Even the throne of Olympus itself is up for grabs. Joining these gods are all new skins, including Illuminator Baron Samdi, Helheim Uller, and more. Each chapter contains 6 skins. Purchase them all to unlock a free bonus skin like Unichrome Set. Unlock all items in Battle for Olympus' 3 chapters to claim Smite's newest Tier 5 skin, Winds of Change Kukulkan. Battle for Olympus is 2019's biggest Smite event yet. The battle for the throne has begun. Who will you side with? Welcome back, everybody. The Pittsburgh Knights have looked great as of late, but it's all going to be difficult here at the Midseason Invitational. We've got Tom F. Baddinger joining us here on Esports Weekly to talk about their first matchup, which is, of course, the Renegades. And the question for me, Tom, is pretty simple.
Shoot.
Which Renegades team are we going to get? Are we going to get the team that really wants to win, really bad, they've been prepping forever to beat Team Dignitas Renegades? Or are we going to get the sleepy Renegades that just kind of roll over sometimes?
One of the big sports cliches I think that we get a lot is a team that rises to the occasion, plays up or down. And I embrace sports cliches because cliches are cliche for a reason. And this is what this team does. Most notably, this is what Raffer does. Raffer's the guy that will absolutely pull it all out to make fun of his opposition. Like, he wants to make a statement almost more than he wants to be number one. And I say that knowing just how much Raffer needs to win these games. Realistically, you got to look at the individual matchup here. Listen, I'm sorry. It's Raffer versus Emilzy, man. And Raffer is coming out with all his knives and claws. Like, that's really what I'm looking at. I'm sorry. Sometimes you step away from the X's and O's and you look at the player personality, and I'm putting a lot on Raffer just needing to beat Emilzy.
And former teammate Kennett. I mean, adapting on the other side as well. I think he's definitely going to want that. Did you write the slower third, by the way? RNG for RNG?
Yeah.
That's well done. That's good. That's good work by you. That's solid because it's so true. I really feel like that's the way this team operates right now in the way that they are. But I think that's a great point to bring up the almost personal vendetta. That might be too strong a phrase, but maybe not. I mean, Raffer and Emilzy have a long history of going back and forth. Both of these guys really, really prefer to beat the other.
And on a bigger scale, not just Raffer, although that is absolutely the headline, the next subsequent paragraphs are all supporting the thesis of these guys have a lot to prove. I've said this here with the regular season, but here Midseason Invitational, big time. This is a LAN. I get it. We've all technically been on a local area network. This is an event, and this is where Renegades have a lot to prove. Funball has been the best guy on the worst teams for years now, and this is his chance to come up and say, I told you I wasn't that bad. We look at Cherio, and he's been shoved underneath high ping rates, and he gets a chance to say, I told you I wasn't that bad. And the same goes for everyone else, even Nika over there in that solo lane. I had a shot and I squandered it. Well, guess what? I told you I wasn't that bad. And so when we watch Renegades, a lot of it is, like I said, RNG. These guys have really interesting gameplay. When you're breaking down a match like this, you got to look at the individual players, and I really think it just comes down to, when you're watching the Knights versus Renegades, if Renegades show up like I expect them to with the fervor and all that X factor, it might be a little amorphous and less X and O's than we might have been talking previously, but I think that's what this Renegades team runs on, is just pure energy.
And they've got to get a lot of it, because on the other side, Tom, I got the pun. Yeah, energy. Raffer made the team. I got there. Thank you. On the other side, there's some other old energy members and adapting. But these guys, I mean, Pittsburgh Knights have really hit the jets as of late, man. They've been on pop-off alert for sure. What has been the biggest difference for them? What kind of turned the page? What hit the nost, so to speak?
a settling in process. They were granny shifting in the beginning of the stages, right? At the beginning of the season, these guys were winning, but not the team that they appeared to be on paper, and that's fine. You heard Millsy talk about and Kenneth spoke about it in different post-game interviews. Multiple people on this team have said, listen, anytime you make a super team, not only are you bringing players together, and they refer to themselves as a super team, but also most of these individuals have been the guy on their squad.
Sure.
And now you take all of these 5 cooks and have them work the line. And that takes a little while to get going. 13 weeks in, 12, 11, they started to get going. That's the scary part. These guys have been name recognition the whole time. Now they added that sort of gameplay synergy, and you're right, they're surging up. This is their moment.
Now, I was going to ask you if you're buying into the hype, but as I take a look at the predictions, it seems like there are a lot of people buying into the Pittsburgh Knights hype right now. Are you conductor of this train?
I am buying into the hype unit hype. If you saw me earlier, I said hype unit was going to take it from Flashpoint. You heard it here first. But if you want to talk about this one.
I do, because that's the segment you're on to talk about.
Sure.
Yeah.
I actually have Renegades.
Ooh, really?
I do have Renegades. Listen.
Did you just decide right now? Because that looks like a decision right now.
No, very true. Very reasonably true. What happens here?
Well done.
You saw me talk about Renegades and how, passionate of their passion I am.
Sure.
And listen, man, me and Rafa, we're very good friends, out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got it.
I would have preferred the Stephen A. impersonation.
I was going for it, and I chickened out.
A little tough, that's all right.
LeBron James.
Okay, we can just move on from this now.
I
Tom,
do have, on a serious note to end it out, though, Renegades definitely, I think they just have what it takes. I think they have the gas in the tank.
Renegade certainly has the option. Tom, thanks very much for joining us to talk about that and some other sets that you weren't here to talk about.
Hype unit.
We've got one more correspondent coming on. It's Hindu Man. We're going to ask him about a set he's not on to talk about, but then we'll get into Rival and Dignitas.
Team up, play God. Smite on Nintendo Switch. Download for free on the Nintendo eShop today.
Welcome back, everybody. We've already gone over all the guaranteed SPL matchups we have, but we got to talk about the top 2 seeds. Both Rival and Dignitas have yet to determine their opponents. That doesn't mean we can't talk about their chances. We've got Hindu Man joining us here, but before we get into that, Hindu.
Yeah, let's go.
You picked Out Cold Gaming, the PlayStation 4 European representative, to beat Armada, the top seed in North America, with multiple SPL players on its squad. You good?
Yeah, I'm just going to make this very clear really quick. It was a mistake. I misclicked.
You five-fingered it?
I legit pressed the wrong button. That's all it was.
Oh, no.
Basically, my opinion of the Alcohol Gaming versus Armada match is probably there's a more chance of Game of Thrones the final season being redone. Than Alcohol winning that set.
That's not high at all.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I feel really bad, because I don't normally punch down very often.
No.
Most of the time I have to punch down because everyone's below me. But that one wasn't intentional,
punching down a lot.
and I felt kind of bad,
Okay.
So I feel really, honestly, Alcohol, I'm really sorry. Best of luck to you. I'm rooting for you. For multiple reasons now.
You're going to look like an outright genius if they win now, by the way.
That's just the script coming to head, right?
The script. We'll see how strong those writing powers are. All right, let's get to the 2 teams that you wrote to the top end of the SPL. We'll start with the number 1 seed, and that's Team Rival. They don't know who they're playing up against.
Neither do.
Neither do. That's right. Neither Rival nor Dignitas know exactly who they're going to play against. But I imagine Rival, when you have a split like that, where you lose one set early on and have been really, really good since then, you're not too worried about who you're playing up against.
And realistically, it's kind of hard for these teams to prep as well. Like, I got a chance to have a chat with Mike before this today to go over exactly how his team's feeling going into MSI and like who his biggest opposition might be or who they think they're going to play. A lot of what Mike was saying is like, listen, it's kind of tricky because there's a lot of teams in here that we may end up facing, but it's hard to prep for any specific team because you just don't know. So mainly for them, it's really been about, in terms of their preparation for this event, has been to prepare for what they want to do, what things they want to try out, but then also working out how to implement that into their compositions and find out counters for some of the decisions that they want to try and run this tournament. And then obviously they're going to watch the tournament themselves to assess from there.
Sure.
It's a very tricky situation for some of those teams where they don't know their first opponent.
Yeah.
It's easy to prepare for one team and go, okay, we're going to face these, and then next round we probably will get them. Well, they don't get that opportunity so much, so it puts them in a sort of a weird position to sit back and watch and just keep doing what they've been doing so far.
Right. Is there a team that you think Rival should be a little bit nervous about facing? Is there a team that maybe they really want that has a chance to get up to them that you think they have a good matchup against?
Mike himself said he's not too worried about any team. He's prepared for all of them in general. Like, he feels like every team has their given day. And the one thing they did bring up, which I really like, is we used to have the LAN versus online mentality.
Sure.
But now that's kind of been established as a general normalized situation of it always being at LAN. But then there's players that turn up on game days, and this is a game day where it's a knockout format. It's not a weekly game.
Right.
And so when it comes to the knockout format, some players do turn up better than others in those events.
It's a good point. Usually a lot of those guys on this Rival squad, Mike, Panda Cat has always been a very good LAN player, and so that's the same sort of idea for them. On the other side, for Team Dignitas, historically there have been a lot of question marks there. I think they've answered a lot of those with their play as of late. But do you think that Dignitas is feeling the same way Rival is? They're coming in kind of on a downslide a little bit. I don't know if I'd be feeling quite as confident if I'm Dig.
And I can see your point of view on that. I've not really had a chance to talk to the Dig boys as much as I would have liked to, but I do know their mentality through the weeks has really been about they weren't comfortable with what they were doing anyway. Even though they were finding the wins, they always felt that there was room for improvement, and they just weren't getting to that level of improvement at the same way as we saw the other teams get improvement from their side. Now, the fact that they didn't come out on top, I think, is a big boon for them personally. I think it's going to be very helpful for them in the long run to establish where their issues are going to be. Now, take into account, when we go to this LAN, most of the games they're going to play in the early rounds are best of threes. Dignitas has taken most of their sets in the SPL this split to the full 5 games. But when you look back at the stats and how those games played out, they won the first 2 games often of the time. So if it's only 3 games and they win the first 2 majority of the time, then they should be okay in these best of 3 scenarios.
That's a good point. They should be feeling pretty confident, right?
They may not even know that, but now they'll use that to their advantage and be like, yes, now we've got a bit more confidence because of it.
You're welcome, Biggie. Handyman doing a little bit of help for you there in that
problem.
scenario. I do think the one thing to note really quickly is that the team that Dignitas faces is going to be the team that won the lower end, and they could be coming in pretty hot. You know, if it's a team like Armada, they sweep out the Flashpoint. I mean, really, I think any of the 4 teams from the minor league is a real chance. They could be coming in riding high.
Agreed. Mike himself from Rival was saying he thinks it's going to be Simplicity, Armada are probably the 2 favorites, but a lot of the European players, a lot of the European SPL players talking about Flashpoint. No real surprise, though. The European players will look to do that, especially when this team did play EU Pro before.
Man, it's going to be a lot of fun. Graham, thank you so much for joining us to talk about the 2 top seeds in the SPL. And that brings us to the finality of MSI. It's a knockout. There's a single elimination, no double elim. It's do or die for a lot of these teams now, and especially, as Graham mentioned, best of 3s a lot of the time, all the way up until the finals of the final bracket and the play-in bracket. It's going to be crazy, man. You got to bring your A game right away. I agree with Tom that Hype Unit Flashpoint is the closest game I think we will see, so you better be there early on Monday because that's our first set of the day. When it comes to now in the quarterfinals, I agree with what a lot of our analysts were saying. I do think Splice is riding high. I think the Knights are riding pretty high as well. But, man, it's really hard to bet against Rival right now. If I'm a betting man, I'd be going with Rival to take it home for the Midseason Invitational. But I really think legitimately any team could end up bringing it in at this point. Thanks so much for watching Esports Weekly. As always, you can get in touch with me on Twitter @Agro. And make sure you're tuned in for MSI because we will not be having an Esports Weekly during the week of MSI, and then we have another break the week after that to recuperate after a big LAN. But the week of the 24th, I believe, is when we will be back in action, so we hope to see you then. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you on Monday morning for MSI. Until then, you can peach it.